There are a couple of things that I'd like to say for book readers in particular. One thing that really bothers me when I listen, and I'm sure it bothers other listeners, is when you start your book reading for the second and ongoing episodes, people will say, if you remember last time, Harry was walking along a street and he saw a motorcycle, and prepare what you're going to say in advance. Otherwise, I can hear you thinking about what in the world was this last week when I read this. Prepare it, and the best way I have always found to prepare it is when you finish a reading, I take a blank cart log, I write the notes on the back of it, stick it in the book as a placeholder, and then when I come in the next time, I pick the thing up, and it's all there, ready for me to read, just like I'm reading the book. It takes you a couple of minutes at most when you're finishing up an episode, and it makes it much easier to record and a lot easier to listen to when you are listening to that episode. So that was one example of a mistake. Somebody mentioned earlier coughing. I have heard that on the air. You'll be reading along and somebody will say, Babbitt's preparations for leaving the office that is an error. You need to back of it. And I would think, well, now I've missed the next few sentences, or the next few thoughts at least, of what people are doing. There is the old stutter, and many of you, even the old pros, do this. He returned, excuse me, not this. He returned to the living room. That is a mistake, and it needs to be corrected. It's not a living room, it is a living room. So you need to back up to the front of that sentence and start that all over again. And sometimes people repeat whole words or phrases. He returned to the living room, but before he settled down, that is a mistake. You need to think about what you're reading and realize that, I got to back that up and correct that. There's the mispronunciation. This was my favorite. I actually heard this on the air. I don't remember the exact sentence, but the word I remember. So somebody said something like, she looked at the floor and realized that the linoleum was cracked. I was driving along in my car and I heard that, and I went off on an internal discussion with myself about, wow, how long has it been since people bought and installed linoleum and blah-blah-blah-blah-blah-blah. And then I thought, what were they just talking about? I missed like a paragraph, which is part of distracting your listeners so that they don't know, they don't listen to what you're saying anymore. How do you know when you've made a mistake? And there are several answers. One is to actually think about what you're reading, be more aware of what you're reading and the noises coming out of your mouth. There are a couple of reasons that you mispronounce words. One is that you've heard it wrong since you were a child and you think that's the right way. Chances are you're not going to know that that's a mistake unless somebody tells you. But many times it's because you just don't recognize that word. So you're phonetically pronouncing it, and the English language doesn't phonetically pronounce all that well sometimes. In German, you might have trouble with the emphasis, but if you just bloody well read every letter, they pronounce everything. But in English, we have borrowed from so many different languages that who knows what, unless you're familiar with the word. If you don't recognize the word, look it up. There is a dictionary in the drawer. There's a dictionary icon on the desktop on the right-hand computer. Just look it up. And there's go to your browser of choice and type in how to pronounce the word. And then you have the people who are reading and they're turning the paper or turning the page or working on notes or something, and that goes out, and that's very annoying to listen to. So Be careful of, puffing your piece, be careful of paper noises. Some publications, you may have to pause, turn the page, remember what it said before and keep going, because some paper is just going to be noisy. So, but you can usually minimize the paper noises. Laughing, Kevin touched on laughing. You got to try to contain yourself and get to the end of it. Hit pause, laugh, get it over with, complain, hit the pause again, and continue reading. Oh, I'm ready to record my first article. My first article is How Mr. Bartlett Fed My Soul by Terry McMillan from the Washington Post. As a note, we always read the title, the author, and any source for the material. I made a mistake. Now, the way you correct a mistake is, first of all, you pause. Take note of where you are. I'm at 50 seconds right at the moment. I'm going to back up about 10 seconds. And I'm going to listen. I'm going to play and listen for the end of the last good thing, which actually was from the Washington Post. And since okay. So I'm going to play and listen. Didn't go back quite far enough, so I'm going to play again. Okay, I heard from the Washington Post, so I pause, get ready to read, take a breath, and I'm going to strike the record key as softly as I can. I was 13 or 14. It was summer. We lived in a raggedy house in the thumb of Michigan with no screens on the window in the attic. I'm going to pause again, and it's a good idea, especially when you're new at doing this, to back up and listen to that fix. Okay, now I listened to the fix and it was nice and clean. There are a few things that people tend to do wrong with a fix. One is when they back up and they listen for their spot, they might hit the pause and record too quickly and cut off the end of the last good recorded word, which would then be another error and cause you to have to back up farther and make the fix again. Another error that people make is that they leave a much too long pause or dead air between the old and the new bit of recording. So it would be like, I was 13 or 14. It was summer. Now that's much too long a pause if that's where you made your fix. So you need to do it again and shorten that. On the other hand, you don't want to make it, I was 13 or 14, it was summer. I mean, that's too short a pause. So you have to try to make it as natural as you possibly can. Third error that people make is that they're too slow in stopping and they leave a fragment from the sentence you're trying to replace. In that case, it would be, I was 13 or 14, it was summer. So you repeat the part of the it in the next sentence. So those are three errors that people make, and you need to practice and learn how to make that fix really impossible for the listener to hear. I'm going to skip ahead, finish the article, and show you how to close it out. Recording again. Discovering Bartlett's familiar quotations under these floorboards was indeed gold. That article was How Mr. Bartlett Fed My Soul by Terry McMillan. If you're racing through your reading, you're not going to have room to do a clean edit. So I don't want you to leave 2 or 3 seconds between each sentence, but take a beat after a sentence, just a beat, and it'll help your listeners listen and understand what you're talking about. And if you have to make an edit, it'll make it a lot easier than if those words are all just jammed up together. It's important when you make a fix, go back and listen to it. It takes a little more time, but it produces a better quality product. People will sometimes cut off the end of the word, the last word in the previous sentence. So you're reading along and know that he was doing it the morning instead of he was doing it the morning. So another problem is that you wait too long to start recording, and you leave a little fragment of the first word that you're re-recording. So instead of saying when the last sad rites of bereavement are over, it says when the last sad notes, whatever it said. Anyway, sometimes you don't read at the same pace. So you're reading along, and now you're going to go back and make the fix, and it starts up at a different level and maybe a different pace. So listen to a few words, know what the pace that you were on and the level of your voice was, and then you can probably pretty well mimic it as you go on.